We are here with the amazing Amy from Zion and Zion. Amy is here to talk with us about improving financial services experience with connected customer data. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your role and then also how Zion and Zion partners with Telium.
Sure. So I am the VP of Analytics and Data Strategy here at Zion and Zion. I do all things Telium. So I lead a team of experts here at Zion and Zion. We do analytics and CDP work. We're one of the Telium partners. We're a full service agency, and what's really unique about us is we have subject matter experts across the agency, whether they're web developers, paid media, marketing automation, or optimization, UX experts, and they're actually trained in Telium. So what we really can do that a lot of the other agencies can't do is when we're doing implementation, instead of just handing it off to your agency. So when we're not the agency of record, which frequently we aren't, we'll do an implementation, or we might be your partner for, actually managing your Telium for you. If we've set up your Facebook connector for you, we're going to actually have someone that's on our paid media team be the person that's helping with that. They can actually help your agency of record who's doing your paid media buying. They can come in and say, okay, we understand why this audience that you set up is not going to scale very well in Facebook. So they're going to actually do extra consulting with your paid media or your creative agency of record, because they really understand how Telium works, as well as they understand how paid media marketing works. So we do a lot of cross consulting with our clients. So we're trained with Marketo, HubSpot, all of the different marketing automation tools, but we can really excel with Telium and being able to help your agencies as well as all of our partners across those different platforms.
That's an incredible service to offer. I know most companies could value from that for sure. Amy, we're here to talk today about financial services. What does financial services mean to you? There are a lot of different subcategories that fall under that umbrella term. So when we talk about financial services, talk to us about what that means.
Financial services has gotten bigger and bigger over the last few years. It used to be just banking, investments, and insurance, and it's really become kind of this neo subset of services as well. There's micro investing, there's these virtual mortgage companies. Even in the last few years, I signed up for a mortgage with a company. I never met. A notary came to my house and I completed all of the paperwork. You can do so many things now completely online with banks that just, don't have a physical presence. So there's a lot of really digital financial services companies that are out there. So financial services is not just a brick and mortar space now. It's a really digital experience for a lot of customers and a lot of our clients. It's something that exists, just completely digitally.
You mentioned a really, I think, kind of common example in this shift in how financial services institutions interact with their customers as a result of the pandemic and everything going virtual or digital and contactless. Talk to us about some of those themes that you saw arising out of the pandemic from the financial services industry.
Yeah, and I think that really started out of customer demand even before the pandemic. There's a group of much younger customers that are interested in being able to do something digitally. Like, I have no interest in talking to a customer service rep. My mom, she'd much rather go to a brick and mortar store. She wants to be able to engage one-to-one with someone, whereas I want to be able to solve problems by myself digitally. I expect that there should be some way for me to, answer a question, answer something on an account, either through an app or through a website. So there was this digital demand that already existed, that problems should be able to be solved for me just intuitively online. And that's where these kind of neo banks, neo investing, Bitcoin kind of services, like these micro investing type solutions, came from, is because there was this large customer demand for it. And then what happened was the pandemic hit, and an entire subset of customers that were not experiencing this digital transformation suddenly were forced into it. Someone like my mom, who had never done digital online banking, had to do it. She was forced, even though for years I was like, seriously, you don't have to go to a bank. You can just do all of this online. Was forced into doing digital banking because branches were closing. She couldn't do those types of things. So that appeal all of a sudden became like, oh, this is very easy. This is simple. And not only did the pandemic cause this, but an entire subset of people then realized how simple it was, how appealing it was, and how much they liked it. So there was a previous market appeal for generations and very mature, savvy customers, but now there's a transformation that's been forced on people that is not going back. So there's this market maturity that has happened that, the banking industry is catching up with. And as a result of that, we had these market laggards that are really needing to catch up with where the rest of the industry is. So I think we're not going to see that going backwards. We're going to see this only progressing forward, where there is much more demand for digital transformation and much more demand from customers that I really expect a retail-like experience. I want an e-commerce-like experience of what I expected from, the Amazons and everyone else. I want an experience where you intuitively, you anticipate my needs.
Talk to us a bit about financial services companies who fall more in the bucket right now of seeking growth and acquisition, and then another group who may be seeking loyalty and retention. We're hearing that there's a lot of shifting kind of between these two buckets that's transpired over the last couple of years in light of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think the growth and acquisition is really what we're seeing with these the new sort of companies, the ones that have been really digital transformative. They are out there just acquiring customers rapidly. They really understand what it is to kind of market share grab those customers that didn't exist. And for them, they really want to understand about acquisition. They want to understand who their customers are, who their best customers are. And they're using things like Telium Audience Stream and CDPs to really understand, how did we acquire these customers? What do customers look like? They know how to take a tool and understand what a best fit customer looks like. So that's where they're able to use data to their advantage to acquire more customers, to understand lookalikes and use their marketing dollars to acquire customers faster. And then we have the smaller companies, not necessarily laggards, but the companies who are actually losing customers, or maybe have been long existing financial services companies that existed in the model, the more traditional financial services companies, that they're looking for maintaining their customer base and growing their customer base. So they want to look for opportunities on, how do I more intelligently work with the customers I have, grow loyalty. Something that is interesting and much more different than financial services, than what you would think of as like an e-commerce or a retail model, is think about any household and how your household is. When we think about retail, we want to know who the person is behind that device. We want to know who our individual customer is. When we think about financial services, a lot of times, it's not necessarily the individual that we want to know about. There's usually someone in that household that's the typical decision maker, that's usually driving decisions. We need to figure out how to reach that person. So it's not necessarily the same approach that you would take with like retail e-commerce, where it's like, I need to know one-to-one. I need to know what you have to figure out. Yes, you still need to know which is the right device to reach, which is the right person, but often you're going to be reaching out, to those individual identities, but you have to model people differently, because who's the one that's engaging the most? Who is the one who's making those financial decisions? So we're having to build out that CDP and those 360 profiles a little bit differently, understand the engagement, and really try to understand who's actually making the decisions, so that we understand, lifetime value a little bit differently, and we target those customers a little bit differently.
Yeah, that householding approach versus that hyper personalization. As you speak about digital maturity in that spectrum, on both ends of the spectrum, when you think about those who are really leading the way or cutting edge with bringing really strategic or creative thinking to the way that they approach driving their business forward, what are they leaning into? We've got metaverse and Bitcoin and AI and ML and all these kind of sexy news grabbing headlines. Are you seeing companies leaning into those things, or is there just some really smart work being done that's worth highlighting?
I honestly think that the biggest opportunity exists for the smaller financial services companies, the ones that, the banks, that they're the credit unions that are there for maybe the less targeted customers that are out there, the ones that are like my mom who really miss the one-to-one connections. We have so many opportunities to educate those customers and grow them and make them feel like, with personalization, that they are still having those one-to-one experiences. Having every branch has a local branch, and we're moving much more away from local branches. We want to move people towards digital, but there's this great opportunity with personalization and with CDPs to make people feel like they're being touched still with these one-to-one experiences. You can send them engagement materials, and because banks, they're just as regulated and probably almost as much regulated as healthcare and government. They need a CDP that is as secure as those services. But when you have something like Telium Audience Stream, where you can have private cloud or multi-tenant cloud in place, you can then start sharing this PII data from your backend systems, which possibly you couldn't have done in the past. And understanding those customers, understanding what they've engaged with, what products they use, how they're engaging on the website, how they've engaged maybe across a mobile app, and start cross-selling services and personalizing a lot around recommendations, and maybe introducing them to, here's your local branch manager, here's the types of recommendations we would make to you as someone, in a very specific age group, as a woman, those types of things, and providing them very personalized recommendations to them to make them feel like they're still connected to a local branch.
I love that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, where we have these, new, highly advanced, all new, kind of neo banking solutions, as you coined it, what are they really leaning into that's exciting and cutting edge?
For them, they have kind of this limitless set of technology. I think they're the ones who are taking advantage of the fact that, they can combine things online, offline, apps, new technologies. They have data where they're running, ML, AI, full data science teams. They can bring data in that they're doing propensity modeling and be much more mature with the types of data that they're working with. And it just builds on these profiles that they already have access to, and be able to then even hyper personalize to you even more. They're not looking at broad segmentation. They're able to make much more intelligent, like, ongoing recommendations to the level of the customer.
You touched on a couple of the other key highly regulated industries, healthcare, government. What can we look to that's happening in those spaces to learn from, best practices, inspiration, or maybe even what's to come to us in financial services?
So I think healthcare was probably one of the earlier adopters of CDPs. They very quickly realized that patients were not patients. They realized that they were customers and that we need to treat them like customers. They jumped into the CDP space very quickly. And they also realized that one of the things that you need to do is protect your data, that there's this opportunity out there to make sure we use our data very savvily, and that we're protecting customers' privacy, and that we're still treating them in that kind of retail type experience, so that we're personalizing. But if we protect their data, personalize to them, and provide them that personalized experience, they're going to become comfortable giving us data. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, but you have to be very careful with how you utilize data. financial services is kind of at this, crossroads as well, where I think there's a lot of organizations that are unsure, especially the much smaller ones. They're unsure of what to do with data. But the challenge I always have is healthcare realized very, very early, and it was probably after several of them. There was a few organizations that actually had some pretty high profile lawsuits where they realized things like Google Analytics are not really, they're not HIPAA compliant tools. You shouldn't be utilizing those. So I think financial services hasn't gotten to the point where they realized that, Google Analytics isn't a tool for you to pass data to, but they haven't really defined what is PII in the strictest sense that healthcare has. So having a tool like Telium and being able to decide and anonymize what data do you send to Google Analytics, and what data do you pass to other tools, what downstream tools that you send it to, what marketing platforms, really having that hub in the middle, that's how I always think of Telium as. Like, you have Telium IQ, you have event streaming, you have audience stream, and it becomes this super powerful hub for you where it is determining what data goes where. And you have the enrichment that you get with audience stream, and then there's the power of the pipeline that you get with event stream, where you can limit with server side, what data am I passing? But what you have in audience stream is you have a powerful amount of PII, since you can have that private cloud that you can pass any data into. So having that ability to say, okay, Google Analytics, I'm going to limit what data you get. If I don't want you to have, it's something as much as, limiting. I know you in Google Analytics, you can limit last octet of IP address, but we can limit it even further than that. And then even with downstream tools like Facebook and marketing automation tools and things like that, we can limit what data we share with them as well. So understanding what data you push where, but having this tool in the middle that you then can combine all of that data and then use it for personalization and use it for data visualization as well. If you're pushing it to a Tableau or a Power BI, you have this thing where all of the data gets combined and you understand your customers. So I think that's where it becomes very, very powerful.
Very powerful. I
Yeah.
love that description. As you're talking about the transfer of data, talk to us real time and the importance of real time for financial services specifically as compared to other industries.
So I think one of the things that still exists in financial services, we do still have ATMs, we do still have branches. There's this opportunity, whether somebody is calling into a call center, which, while we are digital, there still is a lot of service-oriented based business. You can have someone engaging on the website, especially if they're a customer like me. If I have any sort of friction, or I'm having difficulties, or even if I just get locked out of the app, if I have some sort of friction or I'm having difficulty finding something, if I call you, if you have that integration in place, the person that answers that call, and they know that I never call into customer service, has something to expect from me. We can have that two-way integration in place. They're going to know exactly what page I was on, what I was doing right before that. They can know what kind of customer I am. Am I a high value customer? Am I a new customer? What branch do I go to? They can know a little bit about me if I'm kind of in a bad mood, to maybe soften the conversation. Things like ATMs and having proximity-based marketing, those types of things, to be able to push information to brick and mortar banks or ATMs for those types of storefronts. There's a lot of stuff that can happen in real time when we do have segmentation that we can trigger back and forth. So there's a lot of problems that can be solved with real time, and especially when it's millisecond real time, so that we can push data back and forth. And the simplest use cases, when we talk about conversions, we want someone to sign up for a new loan. We want someone to sign up for a new credit card. We want someone to sign up for a new mortgage, and possibly we've been retargeting them. Nothing is better than being able to immediately remove them from those Facebook, those Google Ads campaigns, which cost a tremendous amount of money, as soon as that is completed, and whether that's completed with an actual sales rep offline or that's completed online by just clicking through and completing an application, Telium sending that data immediately to your downstream systems and suppressing them, that is a lot of money that's being saved.
And there's nothing like being able to calm down a frustrated customer. We've all been there.
Yeah, everybody's had some sort of experience where you feel like a irrational crazy person sometimes after you get off the call, and either it was simple or it was complicated, or you're just having a bad day and you're like, oh, yeah.
That's valuable for sure.
Yeah.
What do financial services teams need to be talking about right now? What do they need to be focused on right now?
So I think privacy is definitely something they should be talking about. They should be talking about combining their data in a compliant way, making sure that they understand their customers. If they're not bringing their mobile data in, and I think there's a lot of financial services companies who have apps, they have websites, they're not combining their app and their web data together. So they probably do not have a good understanding of what are their customers doing on their website and in their apps. They may have Google Analytics properties with app and web, but they certainly don't know how that data is commingling. And maybe they have some sort of device ID, but they actually have this great golden record that they could be utilizing, where every single customer logs in to a mobile app when you're a banking customer, or if you're an insurance customer, or if you're a financial services investor, you're logging in with some sort of ID. People are frequently doing that on an app, but they're probably occasionally doing it on a tablet or on a computer. So there is cross-device functionality there. But most customers, most clients, and most businesses are probably not linking that data together. And that's where a tool like Telium actually could help them do it. And understanding then, okay, how are they engaging with our emails? How are they engaging with our website and our app? How are they engaging with any of our marketing that we're sending out? Are they going to the website and actually looking at other things? Are they considering it? Is this a different customer? Maybe I've been treating this web customer like they're not even a customer of ours. I've been treating them like they're someone else because they've never actually logged in and we're marketing to them. So understanding how many actual anonymous users versus known customers that you have. So there, a lot of times app gets treated like it's something separate, and especially when you have a regulated industry, being able to combine that data together and link those users is very important.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Okay, we have started receiving some questions, so I'd love to take a few minutes of your time and answer
Sure.
those. The first question is, what do you do to stay on top of financial services trends?
Definitely my biggest thing, not only for financial services, but for everything, just out there reading blogs, using any sort of resources I can. There is a ton of wealth out there. Keeping up to date on resources. Not only that, using your own instincts, I think, is probably it. Everybody has a bank account. Everybody has insurance. Unless you're not actually logging into a website, you probably have your own natural instincts about what you're actually doing. But there's a ton of resources out there, and just actually diving into them and attending those sort of webinars and things like that. Telium regularly does webinars on financial services. I think you guys even had a blog post out about data security in the last few weeks. So
good plug. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from the audience. We touched on this a bit, but perhaps you could elaborate. Healthcare is another highly regulated industry, just like financial services. Is there anything happening there that we should be paying attention to?
Definitely. Healthcare, I think they have gotten stricter and stricter, especially the companies that I've been working with. So if you look at what they say about HIPAA, they're even strict to the sense that, IPs shouldn't be collected. You shouldn't have things like URL that are being collected. And that's where it becomes very difficult, especially if you've been in the analytics industry a long time. You know, IP and URL are the basis for everything that we do. So that's where really sitting down and understanding data strategy, planning with your clients and your customers, and understanding what data do we need and what data do we really need for our customers. Understanding where you need to go and really working, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, it's working with them, working with their compliance team, working with their lawyers, because I've worked with multiple healthcare clients and each of their compliance and legal teams interprets HIPAA differently. They aren't as strict depending on which size of healthcare company they are. So I think that's where you need to understand, okay, how are they interpreting this? So it's really different based on which size of company you are. And then the downstream effects for marketing tools is pretty significant, because tools like Facebook and Google Ads can be heavily impacted. And then there's also having conversations with them about, you know, how do we treat marketing sites versus how do we treat patient sites? And that is usually a way to actually tackle HIPAA for them, because typically they will let you treat the marketing side of a site before you're actually considered a patient. Different a lot of times if you do talk to their compliance and their legal teams, because they do want to attract patients. So they'll usually compromise and say, okay, if this is not a patient experience, we can treat this differently.
Good insight. Okay, we touched a bit on AI and ML. Are you seeing any financial services companies leveraging either of those in a really interesting or innovative way?
They have, one of the things I will say about financial services companies, for them not diving into the concept of like CDPs, they have consistently been using like data science for a very, very long time. You know, you figure this is a field where actuarial science has been a part of their field for a very long time. So once you can get them into kind of the CDP, customer 360 type space, they're very mature. And that's where the idea of data modeling, they can jump in and usually help. You know, you get them a customer 360 and you get them involved in, all right, we're going to bring all of your data together. We're going to start looking at this from the marketing perspective. It really becomes an easier sell for them, even from the fraud side of things, because there's so many mature use cases that they can do that are not just for the marketing team. They can do analysis based on engagement that they could also use on the operations side. So that's where we can start looking at it and going, okay, let's do, now that we have all of this data combined, let's start pulling some of it out, and your data science teams can start modeling this data, doing some ML and scoring these customers based on a variety of different factors. And then all of that data can be pushed back in again and utilized not only for marketing, but for other purposes that can be used in downstream.
Amy, last question for you. What's around the corner? What will impact financial services companies in the biggest way, whether it be 2022 or 2023? What is your crystal ball revealing to you?
I think this consistent kind of ongoing demand that customers are going to want just lower touch. You know, we want much more digital. We want much more app friendly, less web experience. It's going to be, I want everything moved to an app, which is a lot harder for financial services. Really long contracts or applications that are not really app friendly is something that they've had a hard time adapting to, even credit card companies. That is going to be a challenge for them. They've had to kind of pivot the way they do everything. And I think changing those experiences is going to be challenging. The newer companies, obviously, they started out in an app-friendly environment. They didn't have to redesign their entire sites. So everybody else is kind of catching up. And I think it's going to take them 3 to 5 years to really get to a full digital transformation. But the companies that survive are really going to be, you know, top tier and be fully digital first. We're going to see a lot more personalization because right now, not a lot of banks, unless you're like the Citibanks and the Amexes, are doing personalization and everything is done server side. We're going to see a lot more customer centric type personalization, even at the smaller credit union type level.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what continues to come our way for financial services. Amy, this conversation has been so exciting. I hope I told everybody, get your notepads out, take some good notes. I hope everybody filled up their notebooks with just amazing insights from you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We just love our partners over at Zion and Zion. You guys are fantastic and really appreciate you joining us today for 2022's Digital Velocity for Financial Services.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks.